I am going to beat you into the living death.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man, Ant Walker, here with the latest edition of the Living Death Show. I'm very happy to be before you this week because not only do we have a lot of fun stuff to talk about, we also have a special guest who I am so happy to say I finally met in person. Got to shake this man's hand, got to chop it up for a little bit. Matt Hawkins of the Coast to Coast Combat Hour. What's going on, my man?
Glad to be back. Event didn't turn out the way that I was hoping, but in fact, I get to talk to three of the minds of this sport, that quote unquote sport that I love. I no other three people that I'd rather be chatting with. There we go. So yeah, thanks for having me again. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, definitely, man. And of course, we've got two gentlemen that you know very well. If you are familiar at all with this channel, we know them so much. We don't need to introduce them, but we love them to the point we got to do it every single week. Of course, first up is the jack of all trades who has mastered them all, the senior editor of Sherdog.com and the big homie, Ben. What's up, Ben?
Hey, I'm doing real well. It's good to have Matt back. That's, for those keeping track at home, that is 2 appearances for Matt since the last time we saw his host from the other coast. So, Ed Carbajal taking L's out here. Come on, account for yourself, sir.
Yeah, and
Ed?
Yeah, and Ed and I were DMing each other like a couple days ago. Like, I'm supposed to be joining you guys' show pretty soon, so it's just a scheduling thing. We're gonna get it done. And of course, I should have said Ben Duffy as opposed to just Ben. Like, but you guys know him already, so we're kind of an informal show, so it really doesn't matter. Yeah, and of course,
Gentle
the man
Ben Duffy,
Gentle Ben, as he's called him.
Gentle Ben.
Gentle
You
Ben.
remember
Oh,
Gentle
okay.
Ben? Oh, okay.
All right.
Anyways, carry on.
This is the type of show we're going to have today, everybody. So now, of course, the man who anchors the panel every week with the stats, the facts, the figures, and the numbers. He is the associate editor of Sherdog.com, also my good friend, Jay Petrie. Jay, what's going on?
It's going to be this kind of show today. Here's my stat of the week. The stat of the week is 1. Why is the stat of the week 1? Because Devin Clark's getting 1 puppy. He earned a puppy after his victory this weekend, and that's the right thing to do. Give this man a pup. Give this man a puppers.
Yeah.
So, of course, we do have a lot to talk about, and I think the most important thing to discuss. I mean, we've got a pay-per-view that's literally headlined by the number 1 and 2 pound-for-pound fighters in the promotion, going against one another. That's important to talk about. We've got the retirement of perhaps the greatest heavyweight, if not the greatest fighter, period, of all time, and we had Bellator making its CBS debut. So the second time, I believe, that Scott Coker has been at the helm of a promotion that made its way to network CBS. Ben, Jay, I know you guys will have a different experience because you were watching this on television. I was trying. I was credentialed for this one, so I was, had press access to a lot of things going on, was not privy to what was going on in the broadcast. Matt was sitting in the stands at the forum in Inglewood, so he can give a perspective from just a fan in the building. What was like? So Matt, I'll begin with you. What was your experience being in arena for the CBS debut?
Well, first of all, anytime you're in an arena to watch Fedor Emelianenko compete, I feel like that you're watching something special. Obviously, this is the end. This isn't Pride. This isn't even Affliction era Fedor. But there's something. I'm a huge fan. You got the sweater in the background, but there's something to be said about seeing one of the greats. Even if you were watching Ali towards the end of his career, I mean, when you're in a building with that many, and then you started seeing all the stars and the legends of the golden era of MMA in the crowd, it picked up. A lot of foreign, a lot of Russians in the crowd, a lot of accents. So that was a little bit different than the standard, obviously, Southern California Bellator UFC event. Anybody who's listened to me knows I defend the hell out of Bellator. Gates opened at roughly like 2:30. First fight was scheduled for 3. I arrived about 3:02. I was a little late, stopped for lunch on the way in. Never in my life have I walked in, and I'd seen people online complaining about Bellator not having merchandise, just kind of being a real, terrible with their promotion. And I pointed out prior to this event that I didn't see any billboards. I don't recall anything during the AFC playoff games on CBS. Maybe there was a commercial, but I didn't pick up any. Usually if Fedor flashes by the screen, it would catch my eye, and I don't recall anything during the AFC championship game the weekend prior. So the promotion was kind of weird. I arrived. First thing I do, you can look around. I collect posters of the events that I go to. And Bellator historically, you have no issue. You walk up, you get them. There's a pile of them. And I get it. It's Fedor's last fight. Maybe there's going to be a bigger rush on it. But at 3:05, 2 minutes into, 5 minutes into the first bout, walked up to the thing, walked in with a friend who flew in from Arkansas to watch the fight, another friend who joined us. One poster available. I literally was able to get my hands on the last poster of the entire arena 5 minutes into the first bout of the evening, when there was probably 150 people in the entire arena. Then you go, well, what about your shirts? We're down to 3X and 2X and smalls, guys. And you're looking at them and you're going, okay, well, there's 4, there was 2, there was 3 merchandise stands in the whole arena. So I'm going, okay, give me the first poster. Give me the first poster. We'll bounce to the other side of the arena, and then we'll figure out a way to get down to the floor and check their one out. Go to the other side of the arena. Sorry, guys, we're completely sold out, but we got 3X shirts. Okay. That's kind of weak. Now, so now my buddy goes and he manages to sweet talk the usher to get down below to the floor to go check out their merchandise. No, sorry, we're sold out too. You feel free to leave your number and we'll text you if we restock. So right off the bat, I'm looking around and you've got lines of people lining up to buy stuff and there's nothing available. And I'm going, and there is nobody there, and can confirm the first 5-6 bouts of the night, there's hundreds of people. I don't even know if there was thousands of people in the arena at that point.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing. So yeah, I got my hand on a poster, was able to get a couple shirt size bigger, hopefully shrink it down. I'm never even going to wear it. It's just one that I'll keep, and it'll be a memorabilia. It was actually a pretty cool shirt, listed all of his bouts on the back of it. And it just kind of a cool thing to have. But the fact that, we were ready to buy 2 more posters. We were ready to buy, another shirt or 2 in our group. And I had people coming up to me because I bring a poster tube. I've been to enough of these things when I buy, and I bring a poster tube with me. I load it in there. I carry it around. It protects it. I don't have to worry about the knucklehead spilling a beer on me, and keeps my stuff in nice shape. So people would see the tube and be like, hey, where'd you get the poster? I'd be like, hey, man, they sold out 2 hours ago. I know it's just I know we're only 8 fights in now and there's 5 more to go or 6 more to go, but yeah, they sold out of everything. So that was a real, it was amateur hour. I don't think I've ever been to an event, and I'm sure they're limited edition. They make 100, 150 of them, whatever the hell the number is they come up with. I don't believe for a second that they sold that many. I believe that they were probably handed out to the people that they comp tickets to. The fighters held them back. The Coker held them back. Maybe they're going to go online for $200 a pop. I don't know, but but the guy, the people working the counter said that, we sold 4 to the first person that walked up. Apparently they had autographed Fedor gloves. God, that wasn't even witnessed. So they sold those out. I'm going, what it's baffling to me. So that was a monkey wrench early on, as far as just the whole mental of what the heck is going on. Why would you not have a pile of shirts? Why would you not have a pile of posters? Everybody there wants to buy them. I'd be in the back going, hey, dude, you guys need to start signing more of these. We got a line of people that want to buy them. That's, tens of thousands of dollars that Bellator's just throws away. And then we have to hear about, the pay and all this other nonsense. And I get that we're not going to make up all that, but it was disappointing. First time in my life I'd ever went to a Bellator event and wasn't able to get a poster or a shirt or without it just being, usually you can wait till the main card and grab it. There's really weird. Also wasn't a big fan with starting the night with Caldwell, all the name fights real early. It made it tough for the average fan who thinks that it's going to be you're going to get the 3 kind of no-name fights to start the night off and you kind of warm up the evening.
Matt, I'm so glad you pointed that out because not only was like the Caldwell fight to begin the card like a horrible decision, like that was a terrible, that was a really bad decision. Beyond that, it was crazy. Like this guy is, the former bantamweight champion of the promotion, represented Bellator on an international stage in Ryzen, and like he's literally the curtain jerker of this big event. It just, and I know Caldwell isn't known to be the most exciting fighter out there. He's not the guy that's going to give you, the wheel kick knockouts or anything like that. But it just seemed disrespectful, in my opinion, to have a champion, a former champion of yours, literally starting the night off. I get if he's not on the main card on the CBS portion. I get but then also to have like this host of post limbs and Neiman Gracie on the post limbs, like I'm absolutely certain that CBS being involved just threw things in disarray as far as how things were run. I will say from a media standpoint, though, I think they did for the most part, a very good job logistically of putting things together. So this was the first time I've attended a Bellator and it felt like a bigger event than it might have been in reality. I hope that doesn't come across as disrespectful, but you guys know what I mean on that one. Like I've been to what Cyborg's Bellator debut and Fedor's last fight against Bader and a couple others that were big fights for the time. And I will say, like, the press conferences felt little more prestige on them. I think they rented out a bigger ballroom than they previously would at some of the other hotels near LAX airport. And it had a bigger fight feel leading up to everything. I will say in arena during the fight, I was not a big fan of how the in-house production was as far as what made it to the big screen. To have Fedor's tribute at the end, and we knew it was special because I'm looking right at Rampage and Hendo and Couture and Mark Coleman and everybody else. I'm seeing all these guys milling around the cage beforehand, and I'm seeing them all walk into the cage. But to not have that on the big screen, like I only could see some of it because I was that close, because I was credentialed for it. If you are sitting in the stands, you can't appreciate having, two Gracies and, 8 or 9 or whatever former world champions standing right there, and everyone's shaking Fedor's hand, and he's dropping the gloves in the middle of the cage. Like you can't appreciate that because you can't see. There's too many people around, including cameramen, to broadcast on CBS. so I think there was a lot less love shown to people in house, which is something that I think Bellator is normally good at. It could be an issue with the forum. I've been to the forum, like I said, numerous times, and I've seen some disasters from an in-arena standpoint take place in the forum. So could be more in the venue than on Bellator. But I don't know, guys. I was happy to be there and witness it. Fellas, what was your experience watching this on television? Did it come across as a huge event, that's something that was worthy of attention outside of our bubble?
It came across pretty solid to me. I mean, I watched it all, after the fact, but my understanding is that people were trying to watch it in real time, had a difficult time just actually finding, like, what do I type into this screen to get Bellator in front of my eyeballs? Which I actually had problems with on show.
Or just in general?
On CBS.
Oh, yeah, like the simulcast for Paramount Plus.
Yeah.
Jay, what was it like for you trying to watch this?
A lot of balls were dropped here. This felt like it could have been so much more, and I feel I think it was both CJ and Danny Brenner of Bellator and the associated companies were kind of trashing on media members for saying, "Why don't you say anything nice about us?" Basically, essentially, well, you got to kind of earn that in many of these circumstances. Like, I'll give you a very, very small example. According to, I don't know, basically everybody on the internet, the very TV listings I have Xfinity. People have YouTube TV. They have all the other services. The actual broadcast listing at 9 p.m. Eastern time or 6 p.m. on Pacific said CBS prelims, and it wrote out the prelim fights for what would actually be the main card. So the people didn't actually know that Fedor was fighting on these TV listings because they weren't listed like that. Like, that's a stupid, obvious blunder, but it was intentionally written the way it was, because otherwise you wouldn't write out is Isaiah Hokit versus Peter Ishiguro when you should be writing, I don't know, Ryan Bader and Fedor Emelianenko. So silly things like that. To pick up on what Ben was saying, it was broadcast, the main card, which the 3-5 main card, was broadcast on CBS and Paramount Plus. But what Bellator, Paramount, and whomever did not tell the fans is that if you have Paramount Plus by itself, you still can't watch the fights. You have to have CBS Access subscription through Paramount Plus to be able to watch their fights. So there were people like Luke Thomas that were like, this is what's going on here. There were a lot of important people out trying to watch these fights going, I can't do it. Keith Schillen, our
Luke Thomas, like, who works for a CBS affiliate,
was talking about how things were weird.
Who's like literally like a broadcast partner.
Now you see what I'm saying.
Could not access. Okay.
Yeah. Like Keith Schillen, who we work with at Sherdog and co-host a show with Ben, was saying he wasn't able to access the stupid fights he wanted to on Paramount Plus because there was a paywall in front of a paywall that no one knew about. Like, how do you not? This was the problem, Bellator. This was the problem. No one knew. Just that's the end of the sentence. Like, you can apply it to all the things. No one knew the event was happening. No one knew how to watch it. No one knew any of these other parts to it. No one knew how they were going to set the fights. Like, on Wednesday, no, just kidding. On Thursday, the fight order was the way we were talking about, where they had the 3 ticket seller regional people to get things started, and then you move into Caldwell, and then you do that way. Well, on the weigh-in day, nope, Darren Caldwell's the opener. Now, does CBS have something to do with it? Probably, because they made a mistake. But here's another thing. Bellator scheduled 11 fights in 3 hours. What did you think was going to happen? When in the history of Bellator, even with Bellator prelim sacrifice hour, where there's blood and gore and first limb finishes like crazy, you still probably wouldn't have gotten through all those fights there. And then you have to dump Neiman Gracie on the post limbs and have a half-hour intermission between the Lorenz Larkin spectacular knockout, like probably going to be talking about it, knockout of the year consideration when year's end, because Bellator, CBS, or whomever, the powers that be most likely, didn't want to run the risk of MMA being MMA. And Neiman Gracie, something happening, a foul, an injury, something, and it drags on, and then suddenly it's 9 o'clock and you're not ready to go. So instead, Bellator made the decision to just sit there for a half hour, which made me watch NCIS. And you know what the messed up part was? Not just that NCIS, oh my God, that's really, really violent for a network TV show. There was one thing talking about the Fedor fight 5 minutes before it happened. I watched that stupid CBS channel from 8:32 to 9 something. You figure it would have been wall to wall with, hey, NCIS people, check it out. There's this, you like violence? Obviously, that guy just got shot in the head. So you like people dying and exploding and fighting. So watch this. This is real. This is awesome. No, just a little bitty thing. And it could have been so much more. And the last thing I'll think is Ariel Helwani on the MMA Hour touched on an idea of, at the beginning of the CBS show, walk out all the legends. Walk out Randy and Hendo and everybody. Even walk out Fedor. He's not fighting for an hour and a half. He doesn't have to warm up yet. And do the Pride style, line them up on the alleyway, give them all a moment. Give all the legends a moment. And then Fedor at the end, who doesn't really care and doesn't want to do this, but you're going to do it anyway. Do that whole thing. Give them time. This is CBS. Make it count. No, it was just, here's 2 guys fighting. Here's Brennan Ward and Sabah Hamasi. They knew what they were doing. They knew it would be a violent fight. It was a violent and bloody fight. but it could have been so much more. And I think that's where I look at it. I don't look at it as it was good and enjoyable. I look at it and see what it could have been, because it was so easy and obvious in many ways to make it better. And I'm not mad, I'm disappointed.
I am just dying over here at Jake going like, man, I was trying to watch some barely regulated violence on my network TV, but it wasn't there. So I flipped over to this cheeseball police procedural, and that shit was really violent.
Yeah, it was really violent. Like Gary Cole in between talking about TPS report, shot a guy in the head. Like, boom, bullet. Ah. I'm like, what? It was awesome.
So tell
watch it next week. I'm kidding.
So in arena, in between some of the fights, well, really if I'm remembering correctly, during the main card, they would cut to in the arena like clips of the podcast that Big John and Josh Thompson have with one another, sort of hyping up the next fight. Was that what they showed on TV also?
Nope. We didn't get any of those. We got
all right. I'd certainly
we got a little bit of Josh. You know what we got more of? Josh Thompson trying to riff with Amanda Guerra, I think.
Yeah.
Riffing, and it was like talking about Josh Thompson wearing glasses and he's old. Ha 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 ha. Here's the fight.
You know what? I'm actually glad that you guys got that instead of the podcast clips, because my first reaction when I saw that, I was like, I hope this is not what they're showing on TV right now, because like John McCarthy and Josh Thompson are here right now. Like I saw them a few minutes ago. They're here and they're like wearing suits and stuff, and they can jump on camera and talk. And this is CBS. So I know there's a broadcast position somewhere in this building that they're going to be planted at, and they're going to sit there and talk. And that seems to be much more appropriate for network television, or just television period, than clips from a podcast. Like no slight to the quality of their podcast. It's a good show, but it just didn't seem like it really held the weight that like analysts at the desk talking to you live with the crowd behind them and with the cage in sight and everything. That just means so much more and feels like a bigger event than, a clip of a YouTube show.
It's a no-brainer because they're there.
Yeah, they were there. Like
think. Okay, we always used to laugh at it, but it was memorable when Dana and Joe Rogan would scream about how exciting the pay-per-view was going to be. Do that. They're right there. They're in the building. I want to ask you two something. Did Moro's suit come off as well in person?
No.
Did you see it?
I saw it. I saw it, and only because it sparkled. It sparkled. Like it was like that's one of those things. Like, okay, that's definitely a TV thing, because that don't look good right now.
I mean, he looked like an ice skater, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It was impressive.
He looked like an ice skating commentator. He looked like Dick Button or something back in the 90s.
Yeah, that's right.
And while we're kind of ripping on Bellator here, if I have to hear John McCarthy, I mean, did he really have to ask Fedor how he feels? How are you feeling right now? 30 seconds after getting knocked out with all of his, other legends looking at him? Like, I mean, let's just move on from how do you feel. If I have to hear him ask another, he told Ward, well, you were just in a war, and unless you've been in one of those, you don't know the feeling. And I'm going, well, so I guess, John, you have no idea what that feeling is. So how do you have any clue what he's talking about? Can we just, I used to love John McCarthy, but my God, if I have to listen to him he acts like he was Dan Severn, and it's like, it's just bizarre to me. I get over that. Another thing to jump on, since we're going there as a fan, buying tickets for Bellator. I need to tell anybody who's listening to this who may go to an event in the future. So for this event, for the Fedor event, was the first time I ever reached out to Bellator about potential VIP tickets, because I wanted the opportunity to find out the pricing and to see what it offered me to sit right next to the cage. Tickets went on sale. I don't remember the exact date. I emailed them the night before on their official website asking about VIP tickets. Tickets go on sale. I see good seats starting to disappear, but a lot of good seats not even available to the public. So I'm thinking, well, this is kind of tough for me. Do I just buy the best seats that I can get right now? Or do I wait to hear from them? Do I wait and see if tickets get dropped later, closer to the event? Well, I got, like I said, a friend flying in from out of town. I pull the trigger, I buy seats, end up with good seats, good middle riser, great for viewing the event, but not quite as close as I kind of wanted to be. I didn't hear back from Bellator about VIP for about a month and a half. When they finally got back to me, they wanted $1,750 to sit cage side, get a free poster, and have a bartender be able to bring me $20 cocktails.
That's where the posters went.
In hindsight, but I don't think a lot of people. So I have my seats. As I'm getting closer to the event, all of a sudden tickets start appearing closer to the cage. And I'm going, wow, that's $50 more, but I could have sat in front row in my section. Well, I would have done that. This was his retirement fight. I wanted to be as close as possible. So tickets are popping up. Second row from the cage pops up, $500 a ticket. I wouldn't have spent $500, but it would have crossed my mind if they wanted $1,700 to sit 3 feet in front of that. So that was weird. Jumping ahead, they announced an event at Pechanga Casino out here in Temecula. An event I love to go to. It's 3 minutes from my house. I use that opportunity to sit literally front row. I've done it probably the dozen times they've come out here to that casino in the last 12 years. I get the pre-sale code. I reach out to some of my other media connections trying to figure out the pre-sale code. It's all quiet. You can't get any information. I go on there, I guess the code, I get in. And there's 0 seats available in the first 5 rows to the cage. Now, it's a small arena, so I'm not going to spend the price they want to sit in, like, the 5th row. There was a couple spattered seats, but it's not worth it. I can go back one row and save half the price on a ticket, have a little bit of a riser. I'm not looking at the back of anybody's head. Probably a better view, but again, it's the fan experience. If you ever get a chance to sit 10 feet from the cage, is something it's awesome. If you love the sport, it's just awesome. The feel, the punches, the amount of Bellator is great at bringing celebrity fighters to their events. So at that, if you want to walk around, shake hands, get some photos, it's a fucking awesome opportunity. So again, I got people that are coming in from Wisconsin for the weekend that want to go to that fight. I've got, so it's like, okay, I got to pull the trigger. So I buy the front row in the next level up, which again is going to be a great view for the seat. I want to be looking at anybody's head. It's a small enough venue. You can walk around and you can schmooze with anybody there. But I message again one of my other connections, and I go, hey man, do you mind reaching out? I go, can you find out if they had like a fighter or a employee pre-sale? UFC does it. Just because I'm kind of curious because tickets aren't available. Like this is just, or is Bellator just blowing up and suddenly we're selling out arenas prior to any kind of pre-sale? So he reaches out and I get a contact back going, hey, uppers in Bellator want to help take care of you. Message this guy. I'm like, okay, well, that's kind of cool. Like, this is awesome. Now I'm, kind of getting where I'm at with the UFC just from being at so many. I've been to 35 Bellator events for people listening. I doubt there's anybody on the planet that's been to 35 Bellator events that pays for a ticket to go.
I don't even know if Scott Coker has.
Okay, let's just. I was like 15 Strike Forces. So when you start talking Coker events, I'm in like I'm approaching 50.
It's like
total.
you pretty much have like built a wing on his house at this point.
Correct. Like I mean, so like I feel like yes, I'm just.
If people punched you a couple times each time, you're basically Karahanyan already.
Exactly. Exactly. So I reach out and I'm thinking, okay, like get me on a mailing list. Like I'm not a big high roller. I don't buy the most expensive seats every night for events, but when it's in my backyard, I have no travel cost. I have no anything. I like to splurge a little bit. So I end up getting the next morning, basically like an auto response. Thank you for reaching out to Bellator. Please use code Bellator Social if you want to purchase tickets. And I'm going, well, this is what they sent me. This is like after me sending them a letter explaining that I attended Bellator 10. I don't think there's a single employee for Bellator that attended Bellator 10. That was when it was Spanish, let's. So I try to
George X was commentating, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
That's when they brought in a translator for Tony Lopez a week after I had already watched him speak English at a King of the Cage event or something, or Call to Arms or one of those other.
Tony
old-
Lopez is American.
He came out and he spoke in Spanish and they translated for him in English. I mean, he lives an hour north of me. Like what are we doing here? Like he'd already had 80 career fights by that point. Like, so anyway, so I reach out, get this thing, and I'm like, okay, this is bizarre. So I reply to it like, hey man, I got my tickets. Have a nice day. I'm guessing since it's a casino event, the casino must have held them back for the high rollers. I then get a reply. Hey, yeah, that's possible. We don't control our tickets. The casino is controlling the release of the tickets. And I'm thinking, well, okay, amateur hour number one. Bellator doesn't have a ticket person. They don't have somebody that like controls the tickets. Like this is new to me. Like I think King of the Cage had somebody who controlled their tickets, but not Bellator. Okay, again, I get a reply. Oh, yeah, they're not okay. They could possibly hold back the tickets. I go, okay, no worries. 2 days pass, the tickets go on sale to the public. I click on it to see, just curiosity, what's available. Every seat, first 5 rows available to the public on the day of that sale when it goes. So the pre-sale means absolutely nothing. Bellator holds back tickets from the hardcore fans that get a pre-sale code, want to purchase the best seats in the house, and force the 50 of us to not have those available to us. So I will never again purchase tickets ever for a pre-sale through Bellator. And anybody listening, don't do it either. The best seats in the house, if you want them. Now, if you want to sit front row in the upper level at the Forum, buy them when they become available. Those are there. Those are your $50 seats, good view upper top. But if you want to sit anywhere near a cage or anywhere in the seat, ramp area or anything like that, don't buy tickets until like 2 weeks prior to the event when they finally release them to everybody to become available. So I was just baffled. Prices were blown up. Might not have even bought them because I was kind of turned off by this. I get inflation and all that, but you want $250 plus fees to sit front row when historically it's always been $150. You're pushing it for a card with Kat Zingano in the co-main event, and a couple heavyweights that I'm not all that super familiar with in the main event. So that's kind of my bitch. And if they hear this, I'll probably never get any good seats ever again. But I would recommend.
Why wouldn't you? They don't control their tickets.
It's baffling to me. I mean, and I've spoken to some of the Bellator people. Like, do you want to talk? I've offered my knowledge of like the fan experience to these people, and have just been shooed off. And I get it. I'm Matt Hawkins. I'm a podcast. I'm not some big media guy. I'm not some big rich millionaire, but nobody's experienced the live event more than me. And I feel like I have something to offer when, like, I don't understand why there's not a fighter at the gates shaking people's hands, like who's fighting in the prelims in a month, to like let fans know this guy, let fans get photos. Like it's a guy that they're paying $300 to get. Like, you want to sell some more tickets? They don't care. I've just come to the conclusion that they don't care anymore. None of these promotions do. They make their money through TV. They make their money through TV contracts. They no longer care about the live fan experience. They no longer care about generating a new generation of fans. And it's really become bizarre to me. But this was the first time with Bellator in the last month through this experience that I was like, okay, they've really, because they used to be great. They used to have their fan fest. They used to have all that stuff. And that's just, it's stopped. The pandemic knocked it all down, but they just decided to never rebuild. And it's bizarre to me. So that's kind of the end of my Bellator rant. Other than, I don't care how many times Alejandra Lara loses, give her a damn 8-fight contract and keep extending it. I don't ever want to see you have to try to find her on some broken ass stream fighting out of, Venezuela or Colombia.
Alejandra Lara rules. She's one of the first people I ever interviewed for Sherdog. Like just when I first came on board at Sherdog like 5 years ago, one of the first things I did was a lot of Bellator interviews and features. And so ahead of each event, Bellator PR, at the time, Dan Kitchen or CJ Tuttle would just kind of send the menu. Hey, this is who's available. Whom would you like to speak to? And I picked Lara almost at random. I didn't know who she was, and I had not seen what she looked like. Otherwise, I would have been stuttering.
I was going to say
But-
random.
No, I completely did. And I mean, she was perfectly delightful to talk to. I broke over into Spanish a few times just because she was obviously more comfortable with it at the time, and that like opened her up a little bit. But yeah, and then like the next day when I filed that piece, I was like, oh, well, all right then. I'm glad I didn't know that. I would have been like, you know, because I'm a dork. I mean, one thing I just want to lay on top of your detailed and very interesting rant there is anybody who's watching this and is like, I mean, you guys are being picky, you're being jaded, you're nitpicking at dumb stuff. The one common thread that runs through everything that Matt just talked about, in addition to what Ant and Jay added, you know, Jay and myself about the broadcast viewing experience, is the common thread in all of it is people trying to give Bellator their money and Bellator hitting him on the nose with a rolled up newspaper.
It's guys, seriously, how full was the arena, especially at the end? Because it did not.
Well, at the end of the 5 post limbs.
Yeah, well, okay.
Rant number 2. Let's go into that right now.
Oh,
No,
actually, well, it's actually really funny. The last guy, Yusuf Karakaya, some guy from Turkey, had a super loud fan contingent shouting for him. Might have been because they were the only guys in the building, but they were a very loud on the broadcast. Yusuf. It did not sound, and this might be an odd thing to say, it did not sound like it was a full house, in that Michael C. Williams echoed. When there's an arena like the Forum, like those kinds of arenas that have the acoustics the way they do, the people in the building will absorb the sound vibrations and all of the science behind it. If you don't, if there's empty seats, it will bounce off the empty seats and you will hear a little resounding echo. There was an echo on the broadcast. How full was it when it mattered most?
I would say I've seen it fuller. I'm trying to compare it. Like, I think about other Bellators that were there. Say was Machida Musasi, was that a main event?
No, that was behind Archuleta and Pitbull.
Okay.
228.
So I felt like that was fuller. I think so. That it's hard to tell with Bellator, some because there are certain seats that are going to be closed off because their presentation style. The fullest I've ever seen that arena was UFC 232, but the UFC uses every seat and they sell tickets on top of your lap if you would let them. So that was an absolute full house. Trying to, like, Golden Boy MMA actually was close to full.
Yeah.
Like it's just at the top. It's like the very top is where you'll find more of the gaps.
Yeah, I don't recall Golden Boy, because I was there as well. I don't recall Golden Boy really selling much of the upper level, so their lower bowl might have been more packed. Now they might have sold a couple of the rows of the upper level, but I got my tickets like the day of that event, so it was. But I feel like you're right about like the cyborg fights. I feel like those had a little bit more, but that was all. Everything post-pandemic or pre-pandemic was a little bit bigger, and the promotions were better. I feel like I don't feel like I saw any advertisements. There wasn't a billboard. Not that Bellator was big on that stuff, but occasionally I would run into one, or I'd hear a commercial on the radio or something, and I just didn't. I didn't feel like I heard any of it.
It was stuff all over the Fighter Hotel, but that kind of doesn't count. Like I would say, like, Scott Coker in the post fight, he did address the fact that this was they still, I think he still kind of has a sense that they're getting traction again post pandemic, that they haven't been running events with crowds for that long, so it's like kind of pick back up steam and whatnot. So I'm sure the logistics of everything were a lot different. They had a ton of Russian fighters on the card. The geopolitical climate does not make that very easy. I know the PR guys were scrambling their heads off, and I think this was more so the mix of Bellator staff doing what they do, and now having to incorporate CBS staff, which probably outrank them in a lot of ways. To see those guys scrambling the way they were and trying to work around the CBS crew probably caused some disruptions, but that's still more so my sense doing media for them. And I will say, as far as the media side was concerned, I felt that the PR did an excellent job. They took very good care of me. They took very good care of the other the other media members that were there. And I will say once you come to an event, you're on work mode, you're dialed in. It is harder to kind of keep a gauge on what the fan experience would be like. And Matt, that's why I'm glad you're on today, because especially the screens with Fedor's tribute afterward, that seemed like a huge misstep. I think when you look at the post limbs, like having like Jalen Bates and Lugo on the post limbs, bad mistake right there. Like, Bates he trains out of Long Beach. He trains at the same camp as AJ McKee, who always gets a huge response in that building.
Yeah.
Why not play off of that more? You're building up two guys who look like they could be the future of your bantamweight division. That seems like something you'd want to keep more eyeballs on and more crowd reaction, and enhance the TV experience by just the crowd noise. Because there was from the media room, when we were doing scrums, like the Bates and Lugo fight was going on, like you could hear the crowd reacting to it. It felt like there was still something going on in the building. Sure would have been nice to have everybody still there for that, and media still there for that, and more attention on something that could be relevant to the future of the company.
To answer your question a little better, maybe Jay. So let's say there was like 10. Let's say if we had 10,000 available seats,
Yeah.
I would say, and maybe Ant can confirm, I would say we're looking at maybe like 75 to 80%. When
Yeah.
the main event went off, somewhere in that neighborhood. So
That's tough.
but I think another thing that hurt this event, and I wish they had never made the matchup, is it was a rematch from a fight that lasted 35 seconds in the same arena. I have friends that didn't want to go because they had already seen it, and they felt like we kind of already saw this. So I feel like they dropped. I understand Fedor wanting the title fight, but I feel like as the promoter, he should have done something to bring in a name that's going to be higher than the title fight, or mean something more than the title fight.
Well, let's go ahead and just use that to go ahead and transition into the actual fight talk, because Fedor dropped the fight there, a first round TKO finish for Ryan Bader, a result that I think we all kind of expected. And it was that hope against hope that maybe, a Cinderella story would finally touch this sport. Not on Saturday. What we thought would happen is exactly what happened. So let's dig into like that matchup. Like, Matt, I understand you on that one, because I was wondering the same thing. Like, why was this going on? In one of the pre-fight, it was the pre-fight press conference, Chael Sonnen, who emceed everything, he told a story about how apparently Fedor was the one insistent on this being the fight, and he wanted Bader for his last one. He just wanted a crack at the belt again and kind of avenge that loss for his last fight. I asked Coker, like, JDS, Barnett, like, there were names out there. We found out that the match that I've been begging for several years now, Anderson Silva and Fedor Emelianenko, was put on the table, and Anderson turned it down to box Jake Paul. So
It was more money, I bet.
I'm sure, or just a different. I mean, from what Coker says, it was more so. And Anderson was just like, "Hey, my body doesn't respond well to MMA training anymore. Boxing is just easier on me." So that's what the direction.
Yeah, like his wallet, because it can't fit now because he has all the money from the Jake Paul fight.
But you know what? They would have backed up the Brinks truck for Anderson. They would have backed it up for him. To have Silva versus Emelianenko, like, that's seriously one of the best matchups on paper you could put together in any time frame. So that would have been worth the money to get both of them. But fellas, like, how do you handle that if you're Scott Coker? What do you do? Do you just say, "Hey, well, sorry, we're not going to book you for this last fight"? Do you just give him what he wanted, like he did Saturday? Do you do what Matt says and stack the card? But then Fedor's not the main event. So what's the solution?
I mean, I don't know about stacking the card necessarily. I just feel like you find out who he wants. I mean, if Bader's the only name on the table, then that's all you can do. I get it. If that's what he wants, and it's that, or I want out of my contract. I guess you do it. I feel like there's got to be names you could have brought to the table. I mean, what's Fabricio Verdun up to? Like, I mean, he talks about avenging a loss. Like, we got, and not that Matt probably would have ended any better per se, but you know, and Bigfoot's beyond at this point. But you know, even Matt Mitrione. I mean, I just feel like Bader is just too smart of a fighter. To get into that firefight with Fedor where like a Tim Johnson allows him to land that punch. And at this point in Fedor's career, he keeps his hands down and his chin can't take it. And I mean, it was clear the minute the bell rang, as much as it hurts me to say that, like, it was just going to be the minute Bader landed a first punch. And, you know, I don't know everybody's feeling on Herb Dean. I'm not a huge fan of Herb Dean. I've badmouthed him a lot. I felt like there was a lot of shots to the back of the head. Maybe that's just me being emotional, being a Fedor fan, but I and that doesn't change anything, but I don't know. I feel like there had to have been another name out there, a super fight that you could have created that, you know, Karatanov, you know, have him fight figure out how to get his brother here and have him fight that maniac. I mean, I don't care anymore.
To keep him, he couldn't have given the U.S.
They do it in Bulgaria or Belarus. I mean, it's so weird. And obviously that's a joke. He's not going to fight his brother, but you know, there's nobody else. I mean, it felt
Josh
like it was
Barnett was right there, ready to do something.
I'm not saying on Josh Barnett.
Fedor apparently turned all those down.
Yeah.
Like, I specifically asked about Josh Barnett, and Fedor turned that down because he wanted Bader. Like, that's kind of like, I think he painted Coker into a corner. Like, that was going to be the end result. You know, there was like that sliver of hope more so than the first time they fought, because, you know, Bader has been knocked out a couple times since that Fedor fight. We saw him get upset by Tito, a fight that he definitely was supposed to win in the UFC. So maybe it was going to come back around, but we knew what it was. It's just, it was more of trying to honor the request of, you know, this legend than anything else, in my opinion. I'll throw this one at you, fellas. Was it as sad as the first Bader fight, or just on the scale of sad things we've seen just in the past several months alone, as far as legends leaving the cage? Where would you rank it?
This sport is a cruel mistress. There are so few happy endings, and you know, most of the people paying attention knew that, yes, Ryan Bader's 39. Yes, he sometimes fights a little chinny. Yes, every fifth fight or something, he'll have a game plan and be like, wait, what are you doing? You just walked into that head kick from Vadim Emkov, and then you walked into another one. What are you doing? So there was that little sliver of hope, and yes, it's a heavyweight fight, but you had to know, like, in your heart of hearts, in your, you know, mind versus brain, all those things, this isn't going to be a fun experience. I think it was worse. And I think it was worse because, and this is going to sound very hypocritical, that I loved how Bellator brought in the legends. I think it was wonderful. I wish it would happen more often, to be able to spend some time. But to bring them in after the fight, a fight with a heavyweight that has a penchant for getting knocked out in his old age, what had happened? What would have been the case if it were worse? If he got cold cocked and was out? If he was busted up and bloodied worse than he was there? This was the kind of situation of the so-and-so gets knocked out badly, and Joe Rogan goes to the losing fighter that just got knocked out and sticks the mic in their face. Now, they stopped doing that, but they used to do that for a long time. How do you feel? What Matt was saying about how do you feel right now, how do you think he feels? Yeah, my head hurts.
BaderTap.com.
Yeah, I'm sure. My head hurts. It just didn't make sense. It was a wonderful moment, but it was the worst moment. Do it before, when Fedor is happy and not head traumaed from 5 minutes ago, getting knocked down and bludgeoned, and his eye get all jacked up and stuff like that. It just, the idea was there, where the execution was so wrong. And I think that's what made it sting a little more, because there's Fedor, all of his, some of these enemies or rivals or whatever become friends. A lot of them have, like the Josh Gross wrote an incredible story gathering up stories of all the people who knew Fedor. And one of them was about how Josh Barnett and Fedor became friends after all, through a wonderful story that I won't say on the air because you got to read it for yourself. So all these people love him, and they just watched him get brutalized and go, oh, man. And then they're like, yeah, you're the best, as his eyes stuck because it's bloody and cut up, and he's smiling through the pain. And I don't know. It was that moment that you knew was going to happen, but it still didn't feel good.
Jay, in a way, like, would you even say that photo, the photo ops, with all the legends standing with Fedor, like, when you look across all of them, just about all of them had the same sort of exit from the sport.
Yeah,
like Randy Couture got that Danielson kick, like got the crane kick from Machida. Rampage, if I'm not mistaken, his last time fighting was him getting embarrassed by Fedor. Chael, I believe the same thing. Chael didn't fight again after the Fedor fight, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so.
Chuck, as we talked about the third Tito fight a gazillion times on the show, that still bothers me.
Maybe I'm looking at this wrong. Maybe you're right. Maybe this was Bellator saying this is how it has to be. This is the way. We're gonna watch him get slaughtered and then parade all his friends out to be like, "Yay, you lost. We love you."
I should have pulled the picture up just to make sure I wasn't missing anybody, but I think the only person that didn't really have sort of an embarrassing loss to be their swan song was Dan Henderson, who, just like Fedor, was hell bent on having a title shot to close out his career. So I don't know. I think this whole idea to honor Fedor on this day was doomed in some manner, because if you put it before the fight, unless you do it like the ceremony, like Pride did, like you brought up, I think Ariel, you suggested that to Coker. Unless you do it something like that, like even still, if you do it before the fight, Fedor's in game mode. Like, does he want to deal with all that? He's a guy who he didn't want a camera in his face to begin with. So definitely, an hour or so before the fight, you damn sure don't want a camera in his face. You do it after the fight, well, you might have to scoop him up off the floor and wake him up first. Not the best look. I think they should have just honored him on the broadcast. Had these martial arts dignitaries and legendary fighters in attendance. And if you want to have a ceremony, have that ceremony take place on another card, another big card, your next big card, as the lightweight Grand Prix is kicking off. What a great way to honor a legend while perhaps ushering in new legends with the tournament. That seemed like the better way to do this, but because it's combat sports, man, there are no happy endings here.
You make him the the Grand Marshal. What's the guy that holds the torch at the Olympics?
Didn't Fedor do that for Russia one year?
I think probably. But my point is he's the guy who will wave the flag and let the tournament begin. Be the MC, I don't know. Then you can give him his moment. I like that. I like that more than. So, Fedor, how do you feel getting punched in the head for 2.5 minutes against a guy that we knew you were going to lose to?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Ben. I don't want to step on your toes. I know you're itching to say something there.
Well, just knowing in advance that he was probably going to get knocked out, they should have taken all of those visiting fighters and just dressed them all in white and see if they could get Fedor. Like, Fedor sits up, "Are you dead too, Henzo?" Yeah, I mean, this whole exchange just makes me think there was no way. It's a beautiful idea, and there was no way to present it that wasn't going to be at least a little weird and awkward on some end. And gun to his head, if you told Fedor, we have to do this, we want to do this, this is probably would have been the way he would have chosen to do it. Yeah, bring them all out after the fight, win or lose. So
I still think at the beginning with like an hour and a half before, and here's why: he's a pride fighter. They had to do that before every event. Walk out and they're all lined up, and then Lenny Hart would yell their names. So this is something he's used to. Give him that final moment. I don't know if Lenny is.
That was like 20 years ago, man.
But yeah, I know.
That was like 20 years ago they did that. So
but I think you're right though, and it didn't even have to necessarily be it didn't have to be live at the beginning of the CBS thing.
I just figured that the CBS part was the reason why.
But it could have even been at like in the middle of the prelims, and then it could have been pre-recorded where they started it at the beginning of the CBS.
I don't think that either.
I mean, if you wanted more time, if an hour and a half wasn't enough for him to keep his mind where he wanted to be, I think that visual would have been better. And then you still have them there where if he pulls off the win, then you have the glitter and them all in the cage, and then you do the same kind of thing, but it's a celebration, more of a happy celebration. As far for me, it wasn't as sad as the first one for me. The first one was so quick, and so I think there was more hope a little bit. So I was like, it was the end of a tournament where like there was just, he had won a few in a row, and it was like, okay, like maybe there's something here. Also, it does come to an end for everybody. A couple of the names you mentioned, Henzo, I think beat Yuki Kondo, right, and won in his last fight, although that was after his major run. And then Barnett's still doing some stuff in Genro Ujima and some of that other stuff. So they're not all coming off, but the majority of the guys obviously ended up on the canvas to end their career. For me, it's, and I texted this to Ant at the end, and it was a little dramatic on my part because for me it's a little emotional. For me, watching fights over the years, Fedor is the one guy for me when I'm in the crowd or I'm watching on TV, my legs are shaking. I start sweating. Like he was the last guy. Now, obviously back in the day, it was all the guys, but they've all faded on now or moved on now. And he's the last one for me personally, where I'm going to sit there and be nervous for a fight. When he was undefeated and I was sit cage side against Rogers, or Affliction fights, or when he fought in Pride in Vegas, when you're there, like there was such a feeling to see him fight that was so different for me from the GSPs, the Anderson Silvas, the John Jones, all of them. He had this feeling of like being one of the last guys that kind of appeared out of nowhere. I know he fought in rings and stuff, but as you guys know, being around the sport forever, there was a time where like guys were, you didn't know, like unless you read into the Brazilian tape trading, to find out Kevin Randleman was fighting on, fighting Erickson in Japan or Brazil Open 97, or Kerr in World Valley 203. Like you had to like get deep into these to see these guys. You just heard stories. Vanderlei. I trained with Mark Hall when he entered IVC 2, and Vanderlei was just a name that I had heard of through the little online circuit of like this like dude who looks like he's fighting out of the Brazilian jungle, and like he's hurting people, and his name's the Axe Murderer, and like, so for me, Fedor is kind of the last of those guys. We lost Shogun to retirement a week prior, but guys that like had kind of a special aura to them that guys to me don't have this anymore. So for me, it's the end of the chapter of the golden era of MMA. So to me, it has to come to an end. Had he won, it would have been great. Had he won, I doubt it would have been his last fight, and he eventually would have fought again and lost. These guys don't, so I'm hoping this was his last fight. If he wants to fight in Russia for in front of his countrymen, he can do it. I'm not going to sit here and act like it's going to affect me. But as far as for me, and I think most MMA fans, like this is the end of the chapter of the golden era of MMA, the Couture, the Liddells, the Titos, the era that most of us really became huge fans of this sport. So while it was sad, I felt like those guys being there to kind of comfort him in a sense also was kind of like, okay, we're moving on now. Now it's the Hall of Fame. Now the history books are written. Fedor is going to go down as one of the greatest fighters of all time. It doesn't matter what Dana White says. I mean, it doesn't matter. The people that matter, like us, will go back and go, whether he's the greatest, whether he's the 5th greatest, whether he's the 25th greatest, it doesn't matter. We've seen thousands of fighters fight. He is one of the best and greatest fighters to ever compete and put on a show every damn time, whether it was him getting knocked out or him ragdolling a 7-footer around the ring. It didn't matter. So it was sad. I wanted him to win more than anything, but at the same time, it was like going to a funeral where you're like, that guy lived a good life. So what are we really complaining about? Or like he had a great fight career. He couldn't have been much better, and so for me it was kind of like a peaceful ending, even though it was violent. It was kind of like, okay, it's time to walk away. One of the greats is walking away. He's walking out of the cage with everybody that was in his era, guys who he beat, guys who he wanted to fight, guys who looked up to him. So it wasn't great, but it wasn't as sad as the first one to me. This was like the end, and I can peacefully walk out of that arena and go, I got to watch him fight again. I was at his last fight, and God bless him for the rest of his life.
So Matt, we've already just assassinated any idea of what time and structure looks like on the show today. So
the UFC card didn't matter.
I'm blowing up the outline officially with this question that was going to be reserved further down. Is this really the end? Like that? My initial thoughts when I walked into fight week, one of the first things I did among some of the other media members that were there was just like, yeah, we'll be doing this again. We will be covering a Fedor fight again soon. Jay, I know exactly what sheet of paper you are scanning through your notebook to just put that up on the screen. Is this the end? Yeah. But you know what? Over the course of the week, my opinion started shifting. Up until, I think, Matt, when we spoke with each other at the forum, I was saying like, yeah, we're like, yeah, don't get too sad. Like he's coming back. Like there's something else that's going to happen, I'm sure. And I made some jokes about it afterward among some other folks, but
his answer to the boxing question was what made me decide was what really put me on, because it wasn't a no, I'm done. It was
you know what, for me, Fedor definitely still has the aura. Like he walk in a room and the air is gone and people are just jumpy and and nervous and don't want to look him in the eye and all that stuff. All that is still there, but his response to it felt a lot different. And granted, I'd only been around him for one prior fight week, so someone like a Josh Gross or or John Morgan or some of the guys who have been around for a lot of his fights can give more insight into this, and they can disagree with me on that. But this is the most emotion I'd seen from Fedor, and it wasn't a whole lot, but it was enough. It was enough to give me the sense like he's truly relieved. He's truly like kind of done with this chapter. Him at that post-fight press conference, it was like he's smiling more. Like I was excited to get a smile out of him at the pre-fight presser, but the post-fight presser, we saw his teeth. Like we actually saw his teeth. He laughed repeatedly. He like gave, instead of those one-word responses, he gave like really thoughtful, insightful answers and took time to reflect. And it felt like a man who truly said, okay, I'm genuinely done with this. I have other things I want to do and my body can't take it anymore anyway. That was my sense. I could be wrong. Ben, am I crazy?
No, I'm with you on this one. I never really believed his previous retirements, but this time it does feel like the end of something. He has plenty of other irons in the fire. I wouldn't be too surprised to see him crop up in an exhibition type situation in another discipline. Like I am sure we'll see him in grappling stuff. Like he was doing like very public grappling exhibitions during his last retirement. Like, he showed up in Japan and threw Shinyaoki around for 10 minutes.
We'll pop on Masashi too.
Yeah.
And I mean, he and Masashi had been old training partners.
Yeah.
I just basically used Masashi as his uki for 15 minutes. So I'm sure we'll see stuff like that out of him, and I would love that. For fighters that have an interest in grappling, I won't say but a lower impact way to get some to get some competition in and stay in the public eye. I think that's wonderful. Like, give me that all day over chinny MMA fighters going to boxing in their 40s, which is what seems to be happening. Like, God save me from another like Frank Mir versus Kubrat Pulev. No, but I think we'll see him around. I hope not boxing. I hope he doesn't look around and be like, I can go get I can go get Bigfoot Silva the hell back, over in like bare knuckle, for $15,000. Like, please, not that.
Just a behind the scenes thing, because the audience doesn't usually get this. Sometimes we will discuss matters while the show is broadcasting. I sent all three of the panelists here a photograph of the UFC 283 weigh-ins, and it's a picture of Shogun Rua on his final walk to the scale. And I have never seen a person so happy to be weighing in for a fight. His weigh-ins are miserable and everything like that. But it was the face, it was the smile, it was the relief, and there's a point here. It was the relief of, this is it. This is the last one I'm going to have to worry about. This is the last training camp I'm going to have to do. This is the last test. There were parts of that this past week that was very similar for Fedor, in a way that we all make the jokes, and we've seen the memes of the happy Fedor, sad Fedor, and it's all the same expression, where there were moments of, this is the last time I'm going to hear this stupid question. And I think that's why I'm pretty sure he's coming back, but I'm not 100%. It's not like Khabib, which I'm sure he's coming back. It's Fedor that 80% he'll fight again.
Jay, I definitely, you reminded me of something I want to share. One of our conversations that we had this week. So like pretty much every day, another peek behind the curtain, like every day after some media stuff, I'm on the way home, I'm calling Jay and telling him all about, everything, and you kind of picking his brain on a few things. I felt a little rusty. I had to shake the cobwebs off this past week, but I think it was my first fight week in like 3 years. So yeah, it's been a while, but I still know how to ride the bike.
Jay, if Khabib Nurmagomedov fights again in MMA before Fedor Emelianenko, I will send you a bottle of whiskey.
Okay.
If Fedor fights before Khabib, you will send me one.
Deal.
All right.
Okay, I like it. I wish I'd get some liquor out of the deal somehow.
We'll cut you in either way. Like you're
just
give
me a couple shots off of each.
I'll send you
there.
like a little
Do you guys think
an airplane bottle?
Do you think he's gonna fight? You think he'd fight for an American MMA?
No, he'll show up in Rise on New Year's Eve. If he fight like Tsuyoshi Sudario.
Yeah, if he fights in an American promotion, Scott Coker's going to be the one in charge of that. I don't see him going anywhere else in the U.S. But
all I'm saying is Sakaki Bara was in the building. Yeah,
he was. He definitely was there. Yeah. So, I told Jay this after the weigh-ins. That evening. I'm on the way home, give him a call and say, hey man, I just saw Fedor. I was hanging out a little bit at, in the fighter hotel. He was leaving a restaurant with his team and the aura was the same. Everybody just kind of paused and, froze up a little bit. He walks by and, he knows that we're media. He sees us sitting right there, sees John Morgan with us. He shakes John's hand, doesn't really look at him. But the look on his face, I saw a facial expression, but it wasn't that look of happy relief that Shogun seemed to have, or the happy relief that Fedor seemed to have after the fight. It was a scowl, like he looked like Batman or something, like the mean mug he had on his face. And my first thought was like, he's in game mode, like he's getting himself geared up, but does he have to feel like he's forcing himself to get geared up? Because I haven't seen him looking angry before. Maybe somebody at the table said something and pissed him off. I don't know. Maybe he didn't like the service in the restaurant. I have no idea. But it looked to me like someone who was amping themselves up in game mode. And if that was the case, then he's really past it. If Fedor, the normally expressionless guy, is smiling and laughing when talking to people that he normally doesn't smile and laugh at, and in moments where he normally would be quiet and stoic, is looking angry and looking like he's determined to hurt somebody, that just seemed like a different person. That seemed like a guy who mentally has to get himself into gear, which isn't like, the Fedor that we're more familiar with. So that's when I saw that look on his face, that's what first got into my head. Like, oh, he might really mean it. He might actually be done. He's got plenty to do. I mean, he had guys fight. He had another guy fighting for the title, the middleweight title on this card. Tokov, one of his guys, Vadim Nemkov, who's the light heavyweight champ, was there, and that's one of his proteges as well. So there's enough to keep him busy within the sport without him taking the damage anymore. So I think it's a wrap. Any other thoughts?
I hope it's a wrap.
Yeah, I know, man, because I could see on your face. It was like you had a sense of dread in your eyes, knowing what was to come.
Yeah, I mean, he's just, like I said, it just, of all the fighters that I got into, he was the one that gave me that feeling that we've all had that got us to love this sport, and to see that gone. But I don't want to see him lose again, and I feel like it ended properly with all those guys in the cage with him. So hopefully that's the swan song. But like you said, nobody ever retires, so we'll see what happens.
All right, so let's move things along a little quickly here, because there is a Bellator heavyweight champion that deserves some respect for going out there and handling business Saturday night. Ryan Bader gets it done as we expected. I believe it was his third title defense, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, we got Linton Vassell and Moldavsky coming up soon, and that's, Koger at least told me that's probably going to be the number one contender fight, but it would be rematches, no matter who wins that. Then we had Ali Isaev and Steve Mowry on the card as well. That's when I was thinking, okay, depending on if we get a signature win in this, they're probably going to cut the line and get the number one contendership, except that turns into a draw. So what do we do next with Ryan Bader? Do we go the rematch path? Do we book Isaev and Mowry again, see who comes out on top, and let that be the deciding factor? He downplayed any desire to fight Francis Ngannou, or not even entertaining that. What should be next for Ryan Bader?
Well, he's not moved back to 205. I actually believe that more than I believe retirements of people, which is interesting. Check Congo.
No, please, God, no.
Well, unfortunately,
Czech Congo has been to more Bellator events than Matt, and unlike Matt, like Czech ruined a lot of them. So let's not do that.
Unfortunately for Bellator does have 10 ranked heavyweights. If you look at other divisions like women's featherweight, they actually have 6. That's interesting. But they have 10 heavyweights, and then Elias Isaev, and then a couple other guys. But
is Tyrell Fortune still coming off a loss, or has he won another one since then?
He lost. I think he lost again.
Yeah, I think he got. Oh, Daniel James tossed him around. If Daniel James gets past Marcelo Gomez, they're going to fast track him because he can talk, and they like boisterous personalities, because otherwise it will be rematch city, and or it's Linton Vassell, and I think he's Jack Slack's favorite fighter.
I think Uber Vassell is a little bit different potential animal.
Vassell, what he did to Karatanov was what made me go, wait a second, hold on, because this guy suddenly turned. He was like, it was like Johnny Walker just decided to stop cutting weight, and you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
because it wasn't like Marcos Rogério de Lima, who was a 205er that turns into 265er, but not, organically, more like the pizza roll kind of way.
And the Moldavsky, I mean, I feel like the Moldavsky Bader fight was fairly competitive, right? I feel like Moldavsky held his own early in the fight and then kind of faded as the fight went on. But
it was I'm sorry to cut you off, but it was like the Eblen Tokov fight. Actually, very, very similar. In the first 2 rounds, you're like, okay, Moldavsky might have something here, and then Bader's wrestling and the pressure, and
yeah. See, I got the sense when I spoke with Bader this past week, I got the sense that he really, and I think this kind of came across in some of the interviews that he's done, and and press conference appearances and whatnot. I think he's done with the whole Fedor sphere. I think it's fair for him to just feel like he wants to get past that chapter. Like, he's fought Fedor twice, he's fought 2 of his proteges, and one of them could be coming back around. It's like, You know, I asked him very straight up. You can check that interview on the on our videos for this channel. He just said like, hey, he's like this guy again. Like, this is a level of frustration to be back within the Fedor sphere. I think if you want to keep Ryan Bader entertained, I guess if that's the right word, maybe we get him new blood. That's a phrase that he kept using post-fight, new blood. I say book Maori and Isaev, let them rematch as long as they're healthy and good to go for another one, and then let that decide. Because at least if Isaev wins, you've got a former champion in PFL. You can book a champion versus champion sort of thing. To my knowledge, if you want to hold a lineal sense, he's a lineal PFL champ, so we can keep that going. And Maori at least would provide another face as well. This Ryan Bader is so uninterested in like doing anything outside of just jumping in the cage and just fighting somebody. He wouldn't even upsell Francis Ngannou coming over to Bellator and him really being able to shake the world up in MMA with a win over Ngannou. Like, he didn't seem too interested in that even. So at least give the guy some new blood. At least let it, if especially if Vassell loses, like another Fedor guy, like we're doing this again. Like he's gonna be standing across from another team with the same damn sweatshirts on.
I wonder if he'd be interested in a 220-pound Nemkov to get that to get that back, and Nemkov going for the champ to avenge Fedor.
That wouldn't be out of this question. Maybe that presents some challenges for that team with Nemkov and Moldavsky being close to the top together. Maybe that presents challenges to them. I don't know, but still, for Bader, that's still not new blood, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. Is the door closed on him ever going back to the UFC? I mean, I understand that. It seems to me, though, he's kind of established himself outside, and historically, when you've done that, there was kind of always a door open. So, I mean, but to not want to fight Ngannou, like that would be the person I would think he would be going, "Hey, I want Ngannou. He's most people's number one heavyweight. Let's do this." But if he's kind of backing off of that, maybe he doesn't. I don't know. I mean, it's weird.
I wouldn't, maybe not necessarily backing off of it, but it's not a reality right now. Like, Ngannou's not signed with Bellator. He's probably looking at huge money fights in boxing that those dollar figures would not be present to him in Bellator. I'm certain. Like, so maybe it's just not real to him yet. That could be it, I'm guessing.
I wouldn't be surprised if we only have about 3 more fights left in him.
Well, I mean, hey, he said after the fight that he's got a few years in him, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, he's not a spring chicken. He's got some miles.
He's 40
on him.
soon, and he's a wrestler. Wrestler 40. You know, those knees.
Yeah, wrestler 40 is like 65.
Yeah.
And it's a guy who's been on the wrong end of some pretty bad knockouts too. Like he hasn't come out of this game unscathed. So, I don't know, man. I'm thinking that that's the route you take as far as the rebooking the fight that ended up being a draw, seeing what happens there. And in the meantime, Bader just retreat to doing whatever he likes to do, or plays around in the desert or something. I have no idea. I don't know what he does in his off time, but another guy that he's seen already probably isn't the way, if you ask me. Just
Barnett.
Hey, I don't think Barnett gets off the couch for a Ryan Bader fight. I don't think
Barnett gets off the juice for a Bader fight. Like, why do you think Fedor didn't want to fight Barnett? Why would you hang like a pivotal point in your career on that man again?
Well, that's why I didn't want him to fight him. I'm still sitting with 7 empty ticket stubs from Affliction 3 in my.
I don't think he'd get licensed in California.
Yeah, he'd have a lot of trouble with that. I'm certain. And as far as Bader going back to the UFC, I mean, he's very happy with the way Bellator is treating him, according to his statements.
If he's making close to 7 figures, that's way more than he's making in the UFC.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he's not the guy that the UFC would be like, okay, we want him back, unless they're actually interested in having the best heavyweights in the world, which hey, they let the best one walk out the door. So,
well, it's like Overeem when they paid like high six figures for him and were mad at him in Golden Glory the whole time he was on the roster. It'd be kind of like that if they brought Bader back. So
well, the thing with Overeem was just because that was a Strikeforce contract rollover. Like that was the UFC didn't elect to to give Overeem that money. They were. Yeah, I remember Dana complaining about that with like Barnett and Overeem and a couple other Strikeforce guys. Like, oh, they're getting paid too much. Those were his words in regards to them, and that's because they were under their old contracts. Right. And I think, let's just jump into this topic as well, like the disclosed payouts for that the Athletic Commission released, getting a lot of heat there. 100,000, I think, to Fedor, 150,000 to Bader. Gentlemen, let's talk about it. They say keep that same energy that you had for the UFC. Let's do it. What are our thoughts on fighter pay? And I'm pretty sure you're thinking exactly what I'm thinking right now.
If that disclosed amount is all that Fedor walked away with, that's insulting. Now, obviously, he could walk in sponsored up to the gills. Presumably came out with something from that. We don't know if there was a win bonus that he failed to get, although that's less likely with his contract with Bellator. But yeah, my thought is if 100,000 is just actually what he walked out with, full stop, that's not worth what he suffered in the cage.
There are a lot of voices in the MMA sphere right now shouting that, of course, he's not making that little amount of money, that he negotiated side deals with Bellator so that you will have your contract and we will disclose to the Athletic the Athletic Commission is you will make 100,000, $150, but our other contract with you will pay you a lot more. That's actually a narrative I think Ariel Helwani said on the MMA Hour today. And that's very much true for some fighters. They do have kind of two contracts, but I'm not an attorney, but hold on, wait a second.
You are.
I feel like there's some real questionable legality parts here. If there's two contracts, one is negotiated, the other is under the table, but it's also for like 7 or 8 times the amount of money that it's issued. That's like how it was always that narrative of I only made 25 here, but the UFC gave me an envelope with a whole bunch more money. Yeah, they get discretionary bonuses and everything like that, but I can't imagine it's 10 times the amount that you say to the state. I don't know. I honestly, when I go to the Association of Boxing Commission's convention in July and August, I will have this conversation with commission officials about how fighters and promotions are able to have this kind of thing. Because if you're disclosing it, it's a financial disclosure. Like, I don't know how best otherwise to describe it. It's you're saying that you're providing a signed, sworn document of this is how much we're paying this fighter, and then you're saying, well, actually, we pay him 10 times more, but you don't know about it. But you're the state that's hosting and licensing us. There's some real weirdness there, and I'm sure he's making more than $100,000, but I'm not feeling that he's making 10 times that, and that sucks because he should.
Well, we've heard the UFC, we've heard Pettis and guys talk about getting $1 million check after, showing that they made 80,000 to fight Melendez or something like that in the UFC. So, I don't think it's out of the question. I think signing bonuses are probably a thing too that maybe are spread out over time. So I don't know if the signing bonuses need to be made public, as long as the fighters put it on their taxes and it's done behind the thing. I don't know how much of that needs to be public. As far as keeping the same energy, $150,000 in Bellator is equivalent, would be making like $3 million in the UFC based off of UFC bragging about being worth $5 billion. So I think that's the whole key is that you don't know how much Bellator is worth, and that's where the money and how much they're making and how much they don't have the pay-per-view, they don't have the ticket sales. So that's the biggest thing.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. Because the fighter pay issue is not necessarily about the exact number that the fighters are getting.
Scale.
It's about the revenue that they generate and how much of it they are getting. The UFC paying 15 to 20% out to the talent. It's widely reported, well documented, especially with the ongoing lawsuits and whatnot. We've seen a lot of these contracts now, but Bellator has been paying like somewhere around 45 to 47%. I think is the figure that I'm generally seeing. Yeah, they're paying the fighters fairly, and they also have the option to have their own sponsorships. They're also actually treated like independent contractors and are allowed to go and do other things when they're not competing. So that becomes more the issue than anything. If the UFC is paying you under what like the baseline that other sports leagues pay the athletes, and on top of that, they're limiting your ability to make money outside of their realm, that's when it becomes unfair pay. So as far as the legality of reporting different things to the commission, that sounds like a shady practice that I'm sure there are some government lawyers that are looking into this as we speak and trying to crack that code. I'm hearing that promotions have been known to form shell companies overseas and pay the fighters through other LLCs and all sorts of stuff. So
like Diana Saragova is a representative of Akhmat Fight Club, which is currently, as of February 2nd, 2023, sanctioned by the U.S. government, like the team and the company and the organization. So how is a U.S. promotion paying this fighter? I don't know.
Well, I mean,
Somehow.
when we talk about Akhmat, I mean, I doubt that they really can extend sanctions on someone who like attends the gym that doesn't have a business stake in the gym like that. Then that starts getting real tricky. I mean, you're the lawyer.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just a bozo. So I, don't quote me on that, but we're getting in some real murky waters in that case. But I'm sure that there are lawyers talking to people at the athletic commissions right now, trying to figure out how do they crack this code, because clearly we know Fedor made more than $100,000. Like, we know that. That'd be insane if he made less than that. All right, gentlemen. So let's show some love to Johnny Eblen, the middleweight champion of Bellator. Had a dominant win over Anatoly Tokov. Where do we rank him in the worldwide middleweight picture?
New Sherdog rankings came out today. We have him at 5th, and I was happy with that. I was one of the people advocating for it. He's right now, he is coming off solid wins over two very underrated fighters in Gegard Mousasi and Anatoly Tokov. The problem for Eblen will be finding enough elite opponents in Bellator to keep that going. Because, yeah, he beat Salter, he beat Mousasi, he beat Eblen. What's next?
Jeffrey. I don't know. I mean,
Aaron Jeffrey, a solid LFA guy that bounced off the floor of the UFC 2 or 3 times and finally went over to Bellator. I figured Aaron Jeffrey would be in the UFC 18 months ago, but he kept losing on the Contender Series. I don't. I mean,
he's got a fight with Salter coming up, so that we'll see how that unfolds. But
most likely, and I hate it, and I don't agree with it, it's going to be the winner of Mousasi Edwards, which means probably Mousasi. Yeah. Because then you have to go down far to guys that lost definitively to Mousasi, like Vanderford or I mean Salter, I guess, but yeah.
I mean,
seriously,
how do you think he pairs up
for an Amosov fight or something if he wins one more?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you see him pairing up? I mean, obviously online, everybody bashes the hell out of him because he's a Bellator fighter. To me, he's got a pretty good stylistic matchup with some of the top guys in the UFC. When you talk Adesanya, I mean, just his wrestling base alone seems to me like that for Pereira and Adesanya is would be if they have kryptonite. That's it. How do you see him? I mean, I don't think he stays in Bellator very long, just based as we've talking about the depth in that division. When his contract comes up, I could see him working his way to the UFC. He's an American fighter. Obviously, that always can sell well in the UFC if you can get, especially he's undefeated. That doesn't hurt the marketing when you're going up against the stand-up killers that are in the UFC.
Pereira and Izzy ice him. I think Whitaker, I'll go 49-46 because they'll stick that in the main event. Cannonier can be taken down, but that's probably the highest I'd give Eblen right now.
But I mean, we're also talking about a guy who's only like 12 fights or 13 fights or something into his career. Like, this is a guy who's far from a finished product. Yeah, that's really the scariest part about him, and even the adjustments.
He is 31 though. I mean, he's prime,
but he's 31, but he's in a one of the heavier weight classes. Like, they got a little bit longer shelf life.
That's true,
and he's rapidly improving. Like, by the time this guy's 35, what he'll be able to do, he made some great adjustments, in the fight Saturday. He imposed his will at just the right time. He had a good read on everything that was going on in there, and he executed appropriately. This was, otherwise would have been a rough night for ATT. But he saved it for the team in the end. So I think Eblen can go far. It's just a matter of, can he get interesting matchups put in front of him? That's really it. Bellator's middleweight division is not the deepest. I mean, we're gonna talk at some point about Lorenz Larkin, what he was able to do, and it was a welterweight fight. Putting on the most stunning finish of the card on Saturday. Does he go back up to middleweight, and does that present an interesting fight for Eblen, you think?
Well, Eblen's better than I thought he would, but I think he'd probably beat Larkin at this stage right now.
Yeah, I like it. I don't think that's a great stylistic matchup for Larkin. Like, Larkin can be bullied by physically bigger, stronger wrestlers. That's always been kind of his kryptonite. Yeah, I mean, there's always a chance he could catch Eblen with something nasty, but more likely we see kind of a wrestling fueled 5-round washing.
Any chance we see Romero get back down to 185 for a fight there?
There's more chance he's going to heavyweight. I honestly, I would not be at all surprised if Romero fights Bader, because the Nemkov fight was scratched. I would put that more likely.
Yeah, I don't see a world where Yoel Romero makes 185 again. Like, though the one fight of his that I covered, like, standing in front of him was like, there's no way this guy's going to make it to 185 with any level of regularity after this day, because that dude is absolutely massive. I just don't see it happening. So it leaves Eblen with like a lack of viable options. At least Larkin could provide like the entertainment factor of it all. Mousasi, if we get the right version of Mousasi coming in, at least it adds another feather in his cap, and it's something we can an accomplishment we can respect. Fabian Edwards would be stylistically kind of interesting if he can get past Mousasi. So I don't know. I just don't think that he's going to be in that promotion for long if they can't keep him entertained. Or maybe he makes a move up to 205. We'll see. He wasn't ruling that out afterward.
I mean, it also wouldn't be too surprising for the UFC to cut loose a couple of middleweight contenders that make decent money and don't have a clear path to the title anymore. I mean, I could see them just letting a Derek Brunson or Jared Cannonier, go. Someone like Chris Curtis bouncing back out of the UFC. Like,
Vittori.
Yeah. And ironically, Marvin Vittori, I think, would give Eblen fits.
I do.
Yeah, that would be an interesting one for him. I mean, if you want to go for star value, if he would be entertaining this, Luke Rockhold is a totally free agent right now. And granted, I wouldn't like to see that for his health's sake, but he's got history with Coker. He is a guy who can still make 185 and tends to stay in good shape. Yeah. It would also provide Eblen like that name value that he might need to really stamp his resume. So there's that, gentlemen. Let's keep things pushing very, very, very quickly. We get the clock started. We're going to do some quick hits, and then we got to give our picks for UFC 284. And well, we're time not our friend this week. Matt, I'm going to start with
It's
you.
Fedor, though.
Yes,
It was Fedor.
It's Fedor. All right. So Matt, I'm going to start with you. I'm going to throw you another Bellator question here. Touched on a little bit, but let's expound on this slightly, shall we? What should we do with Lorenz Larkin now? Let me volume.
Never leave him on the prelims. Basically that.
Yeah.
And he probably is due a title fight in his division if he wants it.
Yeah, I'm if he stays at welterweight, I'm up for Brennan Ward and Larkin.
Michael Venom Page.
I'm still holding out hope for Raymond Daniels to make the Bellator return. That's what I'm holding out for MVP. But Brennan Ward, Larkin, sign me up.
Yeah.
All right. So Jay, should Ho Choi have lost a point for his headbutt against Kyle Nelson?
I think in the circumstances, when you saw the replay, I think it was a just point deduction by Tayoni. It wasn't incidental. It was going like this. You have to.
All right. And Ben, was there a performance outside of UFC Vegas 68 main event that particularly impressed you?
No, the card was terrible. And yeah.
Yeah, I like the silence and then the bell ringing. Just really, that was nice and dramatic. All right, so Jay
and Walker, it's time for you to get a question.
Yes, please.
Derrick Lewis lost again, third loss in a row. Is he on the downslope of his career, or his losses just bad style matchups?
I think he's on the downslope of his career. Like, he's a guy who's like had a lot of bad style matchups and still managed to win. We're not seeing that anymore, and I hate to say it, but it felt like he really just quit. Like his head wasn't in it. So it's a shame.
Maybe I'm crazy, but this felt like a great style matchup for him, by the way.
Well, it would have been given what we thought we knew about him.
Yeah.
And it turned out not to be.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah.
All right. So let's go ahead and I have a feeling this is going to be more for Ben and Jay, because I certainly didn't watch all of that card. I only caught the last two fights. It's only because I happened to be hanging out with Esther and Casey afterward, after Bellator ended. So I'm gonna put a minute on the clock, and let's talk about how Laura Sanko performed as UFC color commentator for the first time. Gentlemen, what grade would you give her?
A, easy A. I mean, I said this on the recap. She's the opposite of the dynamic of, well, they were going to have to put a woman in there eventually, let's see how she does. In this case, it's like, this was long overdue, and if you're going to pick someone to spearhead it, have someone who has knocked every assignment given her out of the park for the last 5 years straight. Like, Sanko was sensational, and she was already a familiar enough face and voice that she had some rapport with the rest of the booth, like she was in there for Bisping's joshing and hung around just fine. She's more than anything else. Why compare her to other women who've done commentary? It reminded me of like the return of Brian Stan, to someone who did their fucking homework and was prepared with just well-stated, concise insight at every moment. Sanko killed it.
I'm expecting to hear a ding any second now. Yeah, I echo most of all those. There it is. The sentiments exactly. She was excellent. She was well prepared. She didn't have the jitters because she's done it before. Remember, she's called Fights in Contender Series.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was actually perfect, by the way. That was a brilliant idea for the UFC to do. And I think they did that for Bisping. Before bringing him up, they had him call Fights in Contender Series and do that. Brandon Fitzgerald, play-by-play guy who's excellent. It is now a UFC guy. Sanko was prepared. She was on. She had a lot of pieces to add. There was something she said that it's going to stick with me for a long time. She said it was during an exchange of a wrestler coming in and a fighter preparing to counter them. She said, advertise the price of admission. And what that meant is when a wrestler comes to strike, be ready. If you have a step in elbow, if you have a Derrick Lewis uppercut, if you have some way to stop them or turn it around and make them pay, use that and make them know that. And that was, I've never heard it said like that. And it was brilliant. And that was the first time she'd done UFC commentary. And she got something that I'm going to use now going forward.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for the rest of his career, is anybody ever going to shoot a blast double on Jorge Masvidal without thinking about the price of admission?
Yeah. Like Derrick Lewis in the uppercut. Like Sergey Spivak did it by not just going like this. Because
getting his head on the right side.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So definitely looking forward to hearing Laura Sanko do commentary when it's not the middle of the night. So
and
fellas,
you'll have minty bets to show you just how bad it can be when they put a woman on the broadcast for no apparent reason than her number of Instagram followers, because that chick sucked.
Apparently Johnny might not be around, so maybe there's your replacement.
I just thought maybe like the soul of an executed murderer would inhabit his teeth, and they would just like sprinkle, you know, just like let him rattle around on the desk for a few minutes.
All right, so very quickly, gentlemen, we got to move on to the greatest title segment in all of media history. I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcon, something that surprised us or ironically did not over the course of the past week. We may all not have one this week, and that's fine, but we got to get this segment on the books just because I love the title of it. Jay, what's your I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcon's moment this week?
So back in July, a heavyweight made his debut against Don'Tale Mayes, and his name was Hamdy Abdelwahab. Yeah, Egyptian cat, undefeated, very, very powerful, very, very strong. He fought his way up through Icon and Masvidal's Gamebred, and then he worked for the OC. Came in on short notice and put on a spectacularly, unexpectedly well. He was well conditioned. He was powerful. He was poised. He was all the things you don't expect for a guy. And he went 3 full hard rounds, and he was in great shape and everything like that. Oh, well, it turns out there's a reason why. He was on methanolone and a pretty choice anabolic steroid. And suddenly now his physique, his impressive performance and everything, and the fact that he's a young guy. I think he's 30 right now. Well, he's on the shelf for 2 years. So it turned an impressive up-and-coming heavyweight into you only did that because you were on horse steroids. So I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons, because I looked at him and went, oh my gosh, no way, guys, oh my gosh. And the performance he put on, like Michelle Oleksiejczuk against Khalil Roundtree. You're like, wow, this guy is way too good right now. Oh, because he's juiced up to the gills. Hamdy Abdelwahab, ladies and gentlemen, 2-year suspension. Very choice steroid. Yeah.
That's the good stuff. All right, Matt, what's your I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
I'm not surprised Bellator screwed up the intro to the event. After Ariel Helwani gave them the idea, Coker said it was a great idea, and they still didn't do it. It blows my mind that they continually step on themselves when they have every ability to make that next step, and it's just shocking to me.
All right, Ben, what's your I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
Well, just today, in fact, the news broke that Jorge Masvidal's Gamebred Boxing promotion is going to put on a show. I think it's even the same week or the week before his April fight with Gilbert Burns in Miami. But this card is supposedly going to be headlined by a boxing match between Anthony Pettis and Roy Jones Jr. I mean, I don't know how many of these fights are actually going to happen. Got Jose Aldo versus Jeremy Stevens. Got Vitor Belfort versus Jacare. Got Pearl Gonzalez versus Gina Mazzani. Paul Daly versus Anthony Taylor, and Dylan Kleckler versus Josh Burns. I mean, Pettis versus Roy Jones Jr. Pettis at his kind of like spare tiriest, is a 5'9" welterweight. Roy Jones Jr. fought Tyson last year. What did he weigh? Like 210?
Yeah, over 2. Yeah.
Yeah. That's not a good idea. That bout is not a good idea. Like, Jones is old, but he has still got plenty to hurt Anthony Pettis really badly. I don't get these matchups. Vitor versus Jacare. Like
That might be the only sensible one on there.
Oh, Aldo Stevens. I'm into that.
Okay, yeah, that might be the only those.
Well, if Aldo wants to box, that's what I want him to do.
Yeah,
It seems like Roy Jones versus Vitor would have been the fight.
Oh my God.
yeah, that's
so much
just
better.
That
When
just
they
makes a lot more
start
sense.
canceling, it'll happen. Who did
Yeah.
you say Dylan Kleckler's fighting? I didn't
Josh
know that.
Burns.
Josh Burns
BKFC
as in
Josh
Bellator Burns. Oh my gosh. Wow.
44-year-old.
Dylan Kleckler's a guy who knocked out and Justin Thornton died from that. So that's why you might know Kleckler.
Pearl Gonzalez versus Gina Mazzani. I like Gina Mazzani as a fighter, but short of like Ben Askren, she's one of the more mystifying MMA crossovers to boxing that I can think of. Like, why her? That was not what she did in MMA. Anyway, weird card. Interesting to see how many of those fights actually happen. Honestly, until he steps in the cage on April 8th, I take anything. I'm not even going to say I take anything Masvidal says with a grain of salt. I take it as probably bullshit.
That main event that's not happening.
Yeah.
And if it does happen, we don't want it for a variety of reasons. All right, so I don't really have. I'm not surprised. So let's just move on because let's go ahead and talk about UFC 284. Connor and Chandler they're headlining tough, and fight hasn't been announced or date or even weight class or
170.
Oh, so 170 now they confirmed 170. Okay, because until any of that information was given, it wasn't going to be real to me. So we'll talk about it when the time comes. But we got two title fights to headline the card coming up this weekend in Perth, Australia. Yair Rodriguez and Josh Emmett for the interim featherweight title. Who you got? Start with you, Matt.
I'm gonna go with Josh Emmett just because it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. It seems weird that he would be the champion, but I have a feeling like he has the wrestling ability to kind of have another aspect of the game. And if he comes in with a game plan, I think he might be able to wound Rodriguez and then maybe take him down and grind out a victory. If he stands in front of him the whole time, I think Yair could catch him with something. But it just Emmett seems like he might go down as one of those weird champions that we kind of look back and go, that was a surprise.
Ben, who you got?
I'm going to go with Rodriguez here. And I'm saying that in spite of the fact that this title fight is a complete gift to Rodriguez. This should be Josh Emmett versus Arnold Allen. Mm-hmm. But, Rodriguez is coming into this on the back of like one win in the last 3 years on a freaky injury to Brian Ortega. Like he should not be fighting for a title, but I think he's going to be too fast. I think Emmett's wrestling is kind of a ghost of a mystery, like the ghost of a myth of a legend. Like Emmett hasn't taken anybody down in like 4 years. He has a bunch of takedowns, on his UFC stat line, but 8 of them were against Scott Holtzman, 5 years ago. I think Emmett's going to have to spend too much time trying to get inside Rodriguez's kicking range, and Rodriguez is going to find him head kick knockout middle rounds.
Ooh, I like that.
All right, so before you go, Jay,
please.
The household needs me, so you guys are gonna have to close without me. But let me go ahead and just drop my quick picks. I got Yair for much the same reason Ben does. Emmett doesn't really like to use his wrestling, it seems like, and I think he's gonna stand there and get out kickbox, and he certainly will not have the speed advantage over Rodriguez. I think even if he pressures him, I think he'll be able to angle off and take it from there with counters. And as far as Makhachev and Volkanovski, I've got Makhachev by murder, death, kill. I think Volkanovski is going to be too small and not be able to handle the onslaught from a true 155er. It's going to be brutal. Gentlemen, love you guys. Thank you, Matt. I'll see you later. Peace.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hi.
Hey. All right. So
I will take the last bit of this featherweight championship fight, which I will quickly say. Forgot that it was happening. I was reminded during the broadcast this past week that this fight was happening for a championship. I am going to go with Josh Emmett. I think he's going to be able to press forward. His wrestling is like just in case he's wrestling. You know, you'd be like, boy, if he'd only use his wrestling. But I like what he brings to the table in terms of it's not just straight line angular. It's not just straight line direct pressure. It's not entirely telegraphed. It's not just it's not a boring approach he comes to walk down fighters. Like he will stalk you down without just walking at you like some fighters that are a problem, like Jorge Masvidal tends to be very linear in most of his approaches when he's going to work you over, and it works because people back up and they get back to the cage. Yair Rodriguez is a very fluid mover, which is why I think that Emmett will be able to not trap him and corner him, but land enough to get the respect to make it so that Yair doesn't feel comfortable throwing his fun stuff. Because if Yair gets loose, then you're in trouble. But if Yair's constrained to kind of box with you, then you're on. But there's that 1% chance that Emmett and his team go, hey, wait a second, Frankie Edgar took this guy down. I am bigger than Frankie Edgar, and I'm a weight class smaller, or no, it was the same weight class. I am much larger than Frankie Edgar and much stronger, theoretically. I can do the same. But yeah, I got Emmett on that one. And that means we now go to the main event of the evening. It's a super fight that, as you can tell by our broadcast, we had a whole lot of time to talk about the other things. So it feels like we're neglecting the UFC 284. Now, I can't confirm that this was actually a broadcast strategy to mimic what the UFC has done in terms of showing their love for this event, but at least I remember Islam Makhachev's name. So, Matt Hawkins, you're a guest, you're an esteemed guest, and you have a lot of good thoughts on this fight, and it is a very, very interesting stylistic matchup and an unexpected one. And it is between the UFC's number 1 and number 2 pound for pound. I think they have it listed. I think for sure dog it's like 1 and 4. Yeah. Because we have Ngannou and Edwards over there, which is a very rare thing to have two top 5 pound for pound guys fighting each other. Islam Makhachev, the lightweight champion, Alexander Volkanovski, the featherweight champion, moving up in weight for the first time in a while to fight for the championship. How do you see this fight playing out?
I kind of echo what Ant said. I think that Makhachev is just going to be too big, too relentless. And I think once he gets a hold of Volkanovski, I think that it's going to be all over. Now, Volkanovski has beat up a lot of people, but he hasn't put anybody, unless I'm forgetting something, I don't recall him ever just putting somebody out other than like Chad Mendez, on his way up.
He kind of like attrition stoppage Chan Sung Jung.
Yeah, like zombie.
Yeah.
But, I love the zombie, but I feel like he's a click, maybe lower than some of these other people we're mentioning here. So I think it's kind of weird. Makhachev is so high ranked in the pound for pound. I don't feel like he's necessarily earned his stripes to jump that high in the pound for pound ranking, but that's kind of irrelevant in this fight. The small guy going up historically has had pretty damn good success in these kind of champ fights. When you look at the original, Couture or Couture, I mean, he went down, but Nunes kind of going up to fight Cyborg, and then I want to say Couture, Cormier in his first venture up to fight Stipe, the smaller guy. Although again, Cormier was a former heavyweight. I feel like there's going to be a weight and height, and I just think Makhachev is just too big of a bulldog, and I actually would have rather them wait on this and maybe seen what Aljamain did in his next fight. I would have liked to seen Sterling gone up and fight Volkanovski as a champ version before seeing something like this.
Not too bad. Mr. Duffy, what are you feeling about this fight?
I understand why Makhachev is a 4-1 favorite in this fight. I understand the size disadvantage, the nominal wrestling disadvantage that he's going to be at, but I think Alexander Volkanovski at this point might be the most intelligent, best prepared fighter in MMA history. He is the natural continuation of what we kind of saw pioneered by Randy Couture in the mid 2000s. Then people like Dominic Cruz, Demetrius Johnson working with Matt Hume, Volkanovski working with Joe Lopez and Eugene Behrman. Just is as close to a perfect fighter strategically and tactically as we've ever seen. If you were to pick out a fighter anywhere in the sport, anywhere in the history of the sport, to take the physical disadvantages he has against Makhachev and find a way to win, he's your guy. I'm picking the upset here. He's on a 22 fight win streak. He's been smaller than all of those guys. And he has this preternatural calm even when he's in trouble. I like what he said a couple months ago. He said, absolutely, he's going to take me down, but I hope he's got more than that because I'm going to get back up. He is so much more proven in 5-round fights. All we know about Makhachev is he's fine in the 4th round of a fight he's completely dominating. But your gas tank, when you're the one dictating the pace of the fight, when you're the one who does not have to put out any effort at a moment you don't feel like it because you're just completely trucking the other guy. I mean, even BJ Penn had plenty of cardio when he was running things. I think Volkanovski is going to make Makhachev pay for those early takedowns. He's going to have to work for him. He's going to have to get mat returns. He's not going to be comfortable on top. I think he's going to use his footwork, give him angles, kick his legs. I think he's going to spend a lot of time low kicking the front leg of Makhachev. If Makhachev doesn't stop Volkanovski in the first 2 rounds or rack up at least 1 10-8 round, I'm feeling even better about this pick because I think Volkanovski is going to be much the fresher guy by the championship rounds. I'm taking Volkanovski by decision in an absolute classic that will leave the question wide open as to what happens next. Does he defend the lightweight title? Do we get an immediate rematch? Does Makhachev deserve an immediate rematch? This is his first title defense. You know, everybody in the world will be jumping up and down with joy except for all Dagestanis and Beneil Dariush.
Oh, poor Beneil Dariush. Yeah, he's going to be the odd man out in this situation, isn't he? I guess that the panel's going to be tied then because Matt and Ant have Makhachev winning this fight, but I am also on the Alexander Volkanovski wagon. It isn't just simply a who have you beaten strength of schedule that makes me choose that, but that plays a pretty significant part to it. Because if you think about the Murderer's Row and the variety of different styles that Volkanovski has adapted to and succeeded against, sometimes with flying colors, it is beyond impressive. To be able to say, yes, Chad Mendes, you can take me down, but you're going to get tired, leave your hands down, your chin a little exposed, and I'm going to knock you out. And that's exactly what happened. Of course, you know, the Jose Aldo fight was different because it was what are you doing, Jose? Well, you got to throw punches to win the fight. Don't forget. Oh, you forgot you have to use offense to win a fight. And the Max fights and the Ortega fight and the Zombie fight, where I was able to see a variety of skills in a well-rounded, superior level across the board that I can't think of seeing many fighters like that. And that's not something I felt, considering I had Max Holloway winning the second fight in my official scorecard for Sherdog. And I think I even picked Max to make the right adjustments. And in fact, it was Alexander who made the right adjustments to beat him. I think of what Makhachev has done has been impressive, a long win streak, but it consists of Charles Oliveira, 160 pounds, Bobby Green, a quick Dan Hooker toss around, a prolonged beating of Thiago Moises and Drew Dober, and I think Arman Tsarukyan was in there too. I feel like Makhachev has not fought the kind of guy that Alexander Volkanovski is, where Alexander Volkanovski has fought enough of the right skills to be able to counter them. Like, obviously, you know, Mendes is not the grappler that Makhachev is, but there are similarities that he can use to adapt to that, and he already had learned how to kind of counter that. I see Alexander excelling after about 7 or 8 minutes into the fight because Islam is 100% a front runner that he gets going and is good to go. Until that happens, until he hasn't run into the obstacles yet, but he's going to here in a guy he can't just choke out, a guy he can toss around but can't keep down. And I think Volkanovski is going to be able to outlast him, outwork him, win at least 3 rounds, if not the second as well, to make it 4 and get this done. And that's the way the news goes. That's the end of this extremely long, powerful, and emotional show. Matt Hawkins, thank you so much for joining us here. I'm really happy we were able to get your take on a lot of these things that, even we as media might not experience ourselves, because we see it from this line, where you can approach it from this line and that line too. And yeah, I mean, this was great. I'm really happy you were here. I'm happy you were at the show too.
No, absolutely. Anytime you guys want to have me on, I love coming on here and talking this crazy sport, whatever you want to call it. I don't even know anymore, but I still love it. And I love this wacky boxing matchups. I love everything that's going on. So anytime you guys want to have me on, I enjoy spending my time here with you guys.
Well,
Awesome.
we're going to make sure to book you on the calendar for the Monday after the One Championship Denver show, if you're available. I know that you're traveling and everything like that.
I should be back, and most likely have that day off work.
Okay.
So
yeah, if you're around, because that experience is something we're very much looking forward to hearing about. All right, Bite fans, thank you so much for watching. If you're seeing this for the first time, please like, subscribe, all of the wonderful things. Drop some comments. Say where you disagree. Say where you say we're crazy. We probably are. We are a lot of the time. And with that, I'll see you next time. No fancy Ant Walker sign off. Take care.